Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world you are in. I want to welcome you to Wisdom Wednesday podcast with Dr. Mary Seegers.
Yes.
It is such an honor to have two powerful women that's going to share their story. As you know, April is the month of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And we've been discussing this very serious subject. And so, without further ado, I want to welcome both my guests, and let me introduce them. Tanisha Bestseller Johnson, and then we have Regina Hall with us this morning. Let me tell the audience a little bit more about these phenomenal women. Tanisha Bestseller Johnson says transforming pain into purpose is a gift that entrepreneur, speaker, and book coach Tanisha Bestseller Johnson gives to everyone she encounters. Trust me, it is true. She is a warrior of words with a fierce passion for guiding authors to expand their brand by showing them how to earn multiple streams of income from just one book. As the author of 20 plus books, seven of which have been Amazon bestsellers, she is living proof that sharing your story leads to your destiny. Familiar with rising from numerous fires and coming out unshafted, Tanisha has triumphed over suicide thoughts, depression, low self esteem, marital storms, and blended family woes. She has also endured miscarriages and stillbirth of twins the day after her marriage with her husband. Each of these tragedies have added indelible layers to her resilience. With more than 25 years in journalism, writing, and editing, she has a knack for creating narratives that are authentic and raw, yet endearingly relatable. She is a vessel with the ability to change lives and impact the world. Thus, she is proof, proud book bully. I might just say that. She relentlessly urges others to write the book and get paid for the pain. So I want to officially welcome you. And let me introduce my other guest, dear friend Regina Hall is an author, international speaker, trainer, coach, and CEO and founder of Exhale with Regina and Enlightened Heart Services LLC. It's a dimensional platform providing facilitation, mentoring, inspiration, and strategic partnership with professional women who want to increase leadership capabilities and fulfillment of professional success. Regina has been involved with some very well known, like Les Brown, Dr. Cheryl Wood, when she featured in many of their books and also spoke on their platforms. Most importantly, Regina has spoke at the stage time at the John Maxwell International Maxwell Conference in August of 2021. In the heart of the pandemic, she spoke. Regina is a passionate author of Mommy, I Need You, a brave testament of the unfortunate trauma she suffered at the hands of the next door neighbor. But the book is to inspire, uplift, educate on the importance of healing. She also co-authored with best authors. Uh, it's called Women Crushing Mediocrity, by which she partnered alongside well-renowned motivational speaker Dr. Cheryl Wood. So with that, I want to welcome these two profound women. And I just want to welcome
Same
you. How are you
here.
this morning?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr. Mary Seegers, for having us.
Yeah, thank you so
thank
much,
you so
Dr.
much.
Mary. This is awesome.
Yes. Yes.
You know the drill out there. Grab your coffee or your tea, your orange juice or your water. We're gonna exhale, right, Regina?
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And we can talk about this
Yes.
serious, yes, this serious subject about sexual assault awareness month.
Yeah.
Doing my research, Nisha, I didn't even realize that they even gave this month that type of an honor. Can you tell me a little more about the importance of this month?
Yeah, I think it's really important, Dr. Mary, because in a time and season where there seems to be multiple pandemics, epidemics going on at once, it seems like the sexual abuse pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it, kind of rises and falls. So, you'll see something like the Cosby scandal, and then you won't hear anything about it for months or years. And then it'll kind of rise again and then it'll fall. It's kind of like the racial issue. But that doesn't mean that it's not happening.
Mhm.
And so people need to be aware. They need to know what to look for, the signs to look for. They need to know that it can be happening honestly right under your roof and you not know. A lot of times we think that it's the neighbor down the street that we don't know. We think it's the creep at the park that's like watching all the little
Right.
kids play. But at the end of the day, for me, it was a family member and it was a trusted male figure. It was a male hairdresser that was like part of the family. So a lot of times we think it's the strangers that we need to be looking for. And a lot of times, unfortunately, it's happening right under our own roof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So can you attest to that as well, Regina?
Yeah, thanks again, Dr. Mary. And I totally agree with Tanisha. I think one of the things I would like to
So many
start with.
times. Yeah.
Okay, did you want me to answer the question? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask you another question similar to that.
Okay, go ahead.
With the
Okay.
pandemic, when everyone was shut in, I have read statistics that people were locked in their homes, and those perpetrator had more opportunity to prey on either their own children or other friends. Have you found that to be true, that the people that was victimized were people that they were familiar with or know?
Oh yeah, yeah, I totally agree with Tanisha. Again, we often think it's the person that we don't know, it's a stranger. We also think of sexual assault as like you getting beat down and beat up, and but that's not true. It doesn't have to happen that way. That doesn't exclude the fact that that happens. What happens is that the person is a trusted individual that the family knows. The person for me was the next door neighbor, and so you're not expecting this person to do this to your child. And another myth is that they can be forcing themselves on you. They can be gently speaking to you. They can be saying, things about they love you, that you are special to them. They can be doing all type of manipulative things to encourage you. And that's what happened to me. So he wasn't beating me up. He wasn't mean to me. And so those are the images that we may
Right.
have. And then another thing that comes up is that they say, well, why didn't you stop it? Oh my God, how can a
Mhm.
child stop an adult from doing something so treacherous? And as a matter of fact, the perpetrator
Mhm.
always have the
Mhm.
power, never the child, never the
Mhm.
child.
Mhm. And it just grieves my heart because the perpetrator prey on a child, and then that child had that learned behavior will practice out on other children. Have you seen that to be true? Like in daycare nurseries, they would say they see children acting out what's probably been performed to them. Do you see that a lot, Tanisha, in your research?
Well, so, I mean, some children may act out, but the other thing is some children are really angry. And so we always talk about, the little black girl that has an attitude like, oh, that's just the way that she is. And I tell people, I'm like, no, something happened. Like
Mhm.
somebody hurt her along the way. Because, as babies, as toddlers, we're happy
Mhm.
until we get to a certain part of the world that interrupts our happiness and our joy, and literally it just shifts. It's like a light switch goes on or something. So Yeah, I mean, some people will act out, but some people they go silent. They don't talk at all, or they're reserved, or they. I had a cousin who stayed in her room all of her life. When she was at home, she was never in the living room or dining room. She would lock herself in her room until she got ready to go to school the next morning. So it looks different for everybody.
Yeah. And if I can say something to that as well,
Yes,
Dr. Mary. So what
that's
I would
true.
say to that is that
Mhm.
I love what Tanisha said, that is different for everyone. But I also feel that that type of research, it
Yeah.
puts the responsibility on the child once again. Because the
Mhm.
truth of the matter is, if you think that a child is going to
Mm.
act out that behavior, you are really saying that they are automatically going to be a perpetrator. And that was something that was said in my environment, people not even knowing that I have been sexually assaulted. And I have never acted out on anyone, but that bothered me in my spirit. And it was one more thing that I had
Mhm.
to carry and
Mhm.
worry about. Because as Tanisha, you
Mhm.
mentioned in her bio, that you do suffer from low self-esteem, that you do so suffer with a negative self-image, that you already have all these things that you're
Mhm.
dealing with. And so now you could have that extra added layer, which is unfair to a child.
Mhm.
So it is different from for everybody, and that's really important to know, and not lock someone in who has been sexually abused in thinking that automatically.
Mhm. Yes. She shared her experience. It was a family member, and it wasn't a male. It was female. And so
Mm-hmm.
we think that it's always the opposite sex, but she had with an aunt, and it really she had to say something about it. The family wasn't happy about it. Have you
Mm-hmm.
encountered that it could be the same sex abuse as well,
So for me, it was the same
Tanisha?
sex to start. For me, it was the very first person who molested me was a female cousin. Like I said,
Mhm.
she was the babysitter. And so this was my aunt's daughter. So this was a first cousin. This was somebody that the family trusted. Cousins always spend the night with cousins. And, we if we can't hang out with friends from school, we can at least hang out with our cousins. But there was something going on in my cousin's house that I didn't know because she brought that to our house. And then I went through life, well, am I gay? Am I
Mhm.
bi? Not really knowing my
Yes.
identity because
Mhm.
that seed of confusion had been planted at like 7 or 8 years old. And then I was molested by a male hairdresser. So I had both the male and the female experience. But I feel like overcoming it and breaking through it has been harder to break from the same sex molestation
Yeah.
than the male.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed any difference, Regina, with the same sex versus the opposite sex?
Yeah. So what I can say is that once again, Tanisha makes a very good point. Is that what everyone experiences it differently, right?
Mhm.
But you do go through an identity crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and the like I said, the person that the perpetrator,
Mhm.
he was a next door neighbor, but I did suffer from identity crisis. Because you
Mhm.
do, and I believe that that's also what the Bible talks about. That sexual immorality is a sin against oneself. So when you think about that, that this person is either they can penetrate you, because it doesn't have to be penetration. It can also be other forms of non-offenses, as well
Right.
pornography. It can be, like I said, the coercing you gently. All of those things are added to the sexual abuse.
Mhm.
And so when you look at those type of behaviors that are impacting that
Mhm.
individual, you are really setting them up in a state of confusion. So what am I? I too went through that. Am I gay? Am I straight?
Mhm.
What's wrong with me? Am I enough? Can you be my friend?
Mhm.
It really sets you up. And then the
Yeah.
family, because my
Mhm.
mom, My mom didn't believe me. And it wasn't because I came in a house. I was between the ages of 9 and 12. I'm not really sure. It wasn't because I came in a house saying, look what this person did. My mom saw a stain on my dress. And I write about that in my book, Mommy, I Need You, about the stain on my dress. And when she questioned it, my cousin who was in the kitchen with her told her that she didn't believe it. And my mother followed suit. And it could have stopped, but it didn't stop because I wasn't heard. I was called a liar, which also ended up being another thing where I always felt I was lying. So what I say to that, Dr. Mary, is that each individual experiences it differently, but some common things are self-esteem, self-image, maybe some perfectionism, OCD. You may even end up having sex, multiple partners. You may shut yourself in. Yeah, there's so many variants to sexual assault that we need to really talk about.
Wow. You know, when you mentioned your mother didn't believe you, I remember when I was growing up in our neighborhood, everyone knew everyone. And I remember a friend had said that a neighbor had raped her. And they called they went to the police station. And then the police officer made her feel like, oh, what were you wearing? Did you provoke him? So it was, again, she was being victimized twice,
Yes.
and so it hurts that that you're not believed, even from the officials, So a lot of times that's why it probably wasn't reported. Would you agree with that, Tanisha?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, well, it's
people don't
it's
report.
twofold. It's like, it's the shame, it's fear that nobody will believe you. It's the shame of, well, what role did I play? Because the body responds the way the body is set to respond. So over time, you may start to enjoy it, and people will say, well, you enjoyed it, so you can't call it rape or you can't call it molestation. But if stimulated correctly, the body is set to respond a certain way. So it doesn't matter that it's a female or a male. It doesn't matter. The body is set to respond the way it responds. And so there comes a lot of shame and guilt and fear of even coming forward with your story. And what I tell people is, when you get to a place where your healing is more important than what people think, what people say, so that you can live free, because it's a form of bondage to not be able to talk about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow. Yes. And then you have the power, you're taking the power out of the perpetrator's hand, and you're taking the power, be responsible for your happiness and for your life. And that does take a lot of courage. Would you agree? That takes a lot of, courage to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. It takes
But
a
it's
lot of
needed, though. Would
courage,
you
but
agree?
yes, it's definitely needed. And one of the things I would say, the when I asked the Lord to heal my heart, I asked the Lord to heal my heart, and the Lord started healing my heart. I had no idea me drawing nigh to God meant that He was going to turn my world upside down. And because when you draw nigh to God, God is coming from a place of purity and cleanness, and that's another thing that a person who's been sexually assaulted can deal with, is feeling unclean. So you got shame and you have guilt and you feel unclean and you feel unworthy. So you have all these things that you are dealing with in your mind, not to mention you have irrational and distorted thinking because of what's been imposed upon you. So when I asked the Lord to heal my heart, I had no idea of what that healing process was going to look like. But I stayed in it and I stayed forward. And even though I lost weight, I had suicidal ideation, I just was all over the map. The Lord kept me. And what I say to people is that stay in it, because God will increase your courage. Daily, God increased for me my courage to stand up. And now I'm just so grateful that He uses me to talk to people, and not only talk to them, because my other side thing that I do, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have the ability to be used by God for restoration and for healing, and to let them know that it's not their fault and that they are more than enough. And I'm grateful to God for that.
Yes. What about for you, Tanisha? How was your healing process?
So healing for me, honestly, is still multi-pronged. So it kind of started with a small group discussion for women who wanted to heal from sexual abuse and sexual addiction at my old church, Detroit World Outreach. And I had never been to a ministry that had a small group dedicated just for that.
Yes.
So that allowed me to heal kind of in private. There were only 5 people in the small group at the time. But that small group gave me the courage to then call my mother and tell her exactly what had happened to me as a child. And I wasn't able to tell her that until, 37, 38 years old. And so then, of course, I use my skill set of writing. And so every chance I get, I talk about it in Hush. I talk about it in When the Smoke Clears. I talk about it in Recrowning God's Daughter. So all of my different books will have some remnant of the testimony of overcoming like addiction to porn and masturbation, which stems from this sexual abuse because I was kind of groomed and watching porn and all the things. And so even in addition to that, traditional counseling, I'm doing sound therapy. I'm doing neurooptimal brain training. I'm doing EMDR therapy. There are different forms of therapy. It all works together. Of course, prayer, fasting, going to church, keeping my faith in the Lord, all of the things to make sure that I'm operating at maximum capacity in which God intended me to do.
Yes, that's awesome, Tanisha.
Yes.
If I could just speak to that.
Isn't that awesome? Yes.
That is Dr. Mary. And I just want to say that Tanisha hit it right on the head, that when you suffer sexual abuse, look at all that she's doing to get out of it. It's just not no one and done. That's what I tell people. When people tell you to get over it, that's so insensitive. Please, if anybody listening, don't tell someone to get over sexual assault, abuse. It really it's a healing process. And everybody go through it differently. So I just want to encourage our readers our listeners to understand that God, like what Tanisha's doing, the writing, I wrote my book and constantly talking about it, and even the small group. I went through counseling. I was in small groups. I had to learn about dysfunctional families. It was just so much. I honestly felt like Mary Magdalene. Oh my God. How many demons are here? Because that's how I felt.
To hear you ladies talk about it, I could see that you're striving to be whole and to be victorious, and that it's nothing to do with you. That past doesn't dictate your future. And that's why I think our audience need to know, if something happened, that wasn't even your fault, that you want to say something about it, because when you talk about it, that frees you and it gives you your power back. I was doing some research on this, and they were saying that many times.
The other thing I was going to say, Dr. Mary, is the biggest awakening for me was once I got married and trying to be intimate with my husband and realizing that I was having all these triggers. So for the woman who's single, who is celibate and never gets married, you don't know what a trigger is because you're not being triggered. So you don't know how broken you are until, somebody pushes your button, for lack of a better term. So that was like the big awakening for me. Like I got to get some help, because my body doesn't recognize that it's okay for my husband to touch me now when so many other people have touched me inappropriately.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up, because your mate is so important in helping in your healing as well, to have understanding and to love you through that. And so we need one another. And so That's powerful. So Mr. Johnson is a blessed man. Amen.
Amen.
And we know Mr. Hall is. Y'all just celebrated your anniversary. So there's
Yes.
good after something that's happened, and that's what I like
Yes.
to hear, that we can heal and move on in our lives, even after something tragedy has happened in our lives and we didn't even cause. I was going to say too, doing some of my research, that oftentimes people who has been sexually assaulted at a young age will often go into self trafficking. Is that right? They sell these young girls and boys. Have you encountered any of that, or have you been talk about that? Either one of you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Regina. You want to go?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay,
I
go
was
ahead.
just I was just gonna say that when you look at the sex trafficking, that's another form of sexual assault. Okay. And so no, as maybe as they get older, Dr. Mary, you may find some of them going to prostitution, but I think it's important to point out that this trauma can be multiple traumas. Okay. It's just not, you don't have to have a sexual assault and that's your only trauma. It's traumatic if your parent, like my mom, didn't believe me. That ended up being very traumatic. It's traumatic when you start engaging with others, say same sex, opposite sex, and all they do is see you as a sexual tool. So you really don't know why they're out there trafficking or what has happened. And that's why I love the fact that there are ministries that are out there that are dealing with that, because people are living in trauma states and traumatic states. And I think that really needs to be understood and heard.
Yes.
Go ahead, Tanisha. You were
Tanisha.
going to say something to that? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was not personally trafficked, of course, but I kind of tell people it's like I was prostituting myself, but I wasn't getting paid for it. You start being promiscuous, you start having multiple sex partners because you're constantly trying to get your power back and trying to get your voice back. So it was like, any man who would let me, quote unquote, seduce him was a form of me trying to get my power back.
Okay. Yes. I often say there's nothing new under the sun. In the Bible, they talk about rape and incest, but in our culture today, it seems like we don't want to talk about, want to put it under the rug. Let what happens in my house stays in my house. I don't know if you grew up under that same rule. And that kept people in bondage,
Yeah.
Do anyone want to speak on that? Starting with Regina this time. Regina?
Yeah, well, in my book, I wrote about, I gave scriptures, right? So we have Tamar and Dinah. Dinah is in Genesis. The first rape happened in the Bible. Jacob's daughter was raped. It was his only daughter. And so she was raped. But what I love about this story, and forgive me, because this may sound, oh my goodness, Regina, love that story. Yes, what I love about this story is that her brothers did not sit down for her. Her father was contemplating what to do, but her two brothers, because she had many brothers, was like, yeah, so what we gonna do, we gonna take all y'all out, and they did, because they felt like you touched my sister and you had no right, but I can't leave you just the only one alive, because a prince is the one that raped her. And so what her brothers did is have them to get circumcised, all the men, and then they end up wiping them out. I'm not saying I want anybody to get killed, but what I meant that it was the seriousness of it, that they saw it, because they felt like, now you have damaged my sister. Now you look in the book of I think it's Kings, where Tamar was raped, right? You deal with Tamar being raped, and it was by her brother, and David did nothing about it. As a matter of fact, the Bible talks about Tamar, mourning, and then you hear nothing else about her. She goes and live with her brother, and nothing else is said. David did not weep over her, but he wept over his son when he got killed by his other son because
Right.
what he had done to his sister. So rape was taken very seriously, but again, it was not necessarily taken on by parents, because here we have Jacob who was contemplating, and then you have David who did nothing about it. So I think it's really important that as advocates, that we begin to understand that people are not talking about it, that homes do not know how to deal with it, and they're silencing that person. And that's why it's important for us to find our voice.
Right. That's true. Tanisha, you want to comment on that?
Sorry, I was muted, Dr. Mary. Can you read? Can you give me the question again? I'm sorry. I was listening to Regina.
No, yeah, I understand. I was saying that there's nothing new under the sun, and that we records in the Bible about how incest and also rape was, in the Old Testament, and there was some in the New Testament. But I was just saying, because we grew up in a society that we don't talk about things like that, like the name of your book, Hush, where we just put things under the rug, and how when I grew up, what happens in this house stays in my house. But that really keeps that person, that victim, in bondage. And that's why I was saying, if you see something, say something, until someone believe you and hear what you're saying. Like she said, your voice is being heard. So did you want to comment
Yeah.
about how we don't support the victims?
Yeah, I think we do a big disservice to not just, us and our family, but the children and the people coming after us and future generations, because they don't know what they're up against unless you tell them. So the whole what happens in this house stays in this house, but the house is burning down, the house is on fire, and nobody's saying anything, is not is no longer supporting us. So I get a lot of flack from my family because I tell almost everything. There is no shame, no guilt. Like, yes, if you ask me a question, I will probably give you the answer real raw, unadulterated, just the truth. Because the Bible is clear. The truth will make you free. So it's like,
Right.
why do we want to lie and cover it up and put it under a rug? And nothing heals under a rug or a band-aid. So a lot of times people are afraid of doing the work because of what other people will think or say. But again, it's like you have to put the mask on yourself. Your healing has to be more important than what people will think or say.
That's so true. Ladies, I know this is a serious subject, and I thank you for just sharing your story. And how can the audience reach out to you? I know, Tanisha, for your book, and also for your book, Regina. How can the person get in touch with you? Do you mind sharing your contact information, your social media outlets? We'll start with you, Tanisha.
Absolutely. So on social media, if they just search Tanisha, it looks like Tenita bestseller. Most of my pages will come up: LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of those things is Tenita bestseller. And my company website is soitiswritten.net. That's my publishing company. My personal website is tenitajohnson.com, and they can order all of the 20 plus books under either of those websites at the online store.
Great. I'm ordering my book today for sure. And Regina, how can they reach out to you, Regina?
Yeah, I would just encourage them to go to my website, reginachall.com. If they go there, they can find out more about my book and order from there, as well as find out the type of programs and workshops that I do. So I would encourage them to go there, because I will be starting up. It's called 10 days to self-esteem. And so I do it in 5 weeks. And it really helped those who are dealing with distorted thinking and thoughts and really bring about a healing in their lives. I mean, I'm just like Tanisha, hers is writing, mine's is speaking, and mine's is training, because I really want women to understand that you don't have to hurt alone. And just one other point that Tanisha made, I was in my 20s, late 20s, when I really understood the impact of what happened to me. And so, Mary, a lot of women are walking around hurting from childhood traumas. Women, professional women, women working other type of jobs. So women are hurting.
Yeah.
Yes. And they don't have to hurt if they reach out to either one of these women. I know the healing process can start. And just because something happened to you doesn't mean that identify who you are.
Amen.
And so with that, ladies, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your stories, to speak your truth. And this month, in fact, thank you. Thank you for saying yes. I appreciate that. Any last parting words you want to have, Tanisha, and then I'll give it to Regina. Any last parting words you want to give to the audience?
Yeah, I would just say be intentional about doing your own work. People may have hurt you. People may have done some unmentionable things to you, but the healing is your responsibility. And so we really have to move from the victim mentality to the victor mentality and be intentional about doing our own work.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Wise words. So much wisdom. Thank you, Regina.
Yes, that was awesome. Dr. Mary, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. And I have just enjoyed being on this platform with Tanisha, bestseller, author, because, we don't often get an opportunity. So thank you for this platform to share our stories together and to have two African-American women stepping out and sharing their story of what happened to them and refusing to allow themselves to be hushed or unheard is very, very powerful. So thank you for this platform, and thank you so much, Tanisha, for being here with you.
Yes. Have a great day, ladies, and we'll see you next week on Wisdom Wednesday podcast. Bye for now.